Growing up, my first ever video game console was a Nintendo GameCube, mainly because my favorite game series was Sonic the Hedgehog and my dad wanted to find the cheapest option. I played a lot of Sonic Adventure 2, Super Mario Sunshine, and even Spyro Enter the Dragonfly, so obviously platformers were my favorite genre at the time. Then one day, I can't remember if my dad took me to a game store and I picked it out, or he just bought it for me because he thought I would like it, but he bought me a copy of Ty the Tasmanian Tiger. I had never heard of the game before, but obviously looking back on it, it was because it was a brand new franchise, but I played it, had a lot of fun with it, never got around to beating it at the time, but nonetheless, I had a really good time playing Ty the Tasmanian Tiger. Skip ahead to late 2019, early 2020, and I was kind of feeling nostalgic and sort of wanted to play Ty the Tasmanian Tiger again, and then I came to find out that not only there were PC versions of these games, they made a fourth game that was made in the style of the Game Boy Advance games, and in March of 2020, there was going to be an HD remake or remaster released on the Switch. I found out their crowdfunding page was still open for the game, and they actually offered a $5 discount for the digital copy, and I went ahead and jumped right on that. Skip ahead to March 31st, 2020, Ty the Tasmanian Tiger HD released on the Switch. I played it for a few hours, had a really good time, then a bunch of other stuff ended up coming up. I never got around to beating it. Then cut to a few nights ago where I was just randomly browsing the eShop and found out that Ty 2 HD was coming out today as of recording, and I decided, okay, I have to finally beat Ty the Tasmanian Tiger, and to celebrate the game coming out today, that I won't be able to buy until tomorrow, I want to review the original Ty the Tasmanian Tiger. Well, the HD version anyway. Before we start, I beat Ty the Tasmanian Tiger HD on the Switch. It took me maybe 6 or 7 hours, but I also did like to do some of the collectible hunting, so that's probably why it took me as long as it did. I'm showing Xbox One footage because that's the system that's hooked up to my PC. It's just easier for recording footage. With all that out of the way, here's my review for Ty the Tasmanian Tiger HD. A brief story setup is that an evil cassowary, Boss Cass, comes to the Outback to steal 5 talismans. When he gets there, he's confronted by some Tasmanian tigers wielding boomerangs. During the scuffle, Boss Cass opens up a portal that would imprison the Tasmanian tigers, but right before they would be taken away, one of the tigers throws their boomerang and it ends up scattering all the talismans, and now Boss Cass needs to find them. Years later, the child of those Tasmanian tigers that were imprisoned, named Ty, falls into a cave and encounters the Bunyip Elder, who essentially just tells him everything I told you now, and now it's up to Ty to recover the talismans, defeat Boss Cass, and reunite with his parents. While I will admit that the basic plot and story setup are relatively generic, Ty the Tasmanian Tiger has so much personality to its overall world, and that is mainly because of the characters and the setting itself. In the game, the developers use a lot of native wildlife for characters in the game, such as Shazza, Maurice, and Julius, a dingo, cockatoo, and koala respectively. Though my favorite character in the game besides Ty himself has to be Lenny the lyrebird. The one joke with the character is exactly what you would expect, but I found the execution to be really funny. Thus, Lenny is very memorable for me. As for the game's setting, Ty the Tasmanian Tiger does take place in Australia, and the developers took full advantage of the setting. From the Great Barrier Reef to the rainforest all the way to the Outback, this game looks fantastic and takes full advantage of the setting. Variety truly is a spice of life, and Chrome Studios clearly understands that. The only one glaring downside visually is, yes, this is very much so a GameCube or PlayStation 2 game, because the character models, for the most part, when they're interacting with other character models, just don't look very good. I mean, the first boss fight immediately comes to mind when I think about that, as Ty is reaching for the Thunder Egg. It just looks genuinely awful. That being said, this is a 20-year-old PlayStation 2 game, so I'm not exactly going to harp on that. It's just a minor issue. Moving on to the gameplay, Ty the Tasmanian Tiger is a collectathon-style platformer, where instead of jumping on enemies or rolling into a ball to attack, you use boomerangs. I mean, you also can bite enemies, and certain enemies do require that you bite them in order to defeat them, but for the most part, you're relying on your boomerangs. You start off with one, then not too far into the game, you get a second one, and I'll just go ahead and spoil 2 of the ones you get throughout the story. You get fire and ice boomerangs, so yes, this was tied into Sonic Boom all along. One thing I really like about the extra boomerangs is the variety it adds to gameplay. For example, the ice rangs can put out fires and temporarily freeze enemies, and the fire rangs can melt ice. While not straying from the basic formula too much, these little things do add just enough variety to gameplay to keep things fresh throughout the campaign. Anyway, for the main things you actually collect in this game, you collect Thunder Eggs. Essentially, you give them to Julius, they power a machine, so you can fight a boss and grab one of the talismans. There are multiple hidden throughout each level, including a few that are essentially main story missions, followed by a handful of optional objectives, ranging from collecting all 300 opals in every single stage, to rescuing all 5 of the captive animals. It's a solid formula that gives you good bang for your buck, and honestly, I never really got tired of collecting these things. The other main collectibles are called Golden Cogs. They are exactly what they sound like. There's about 10 in every single stage, and if you collect enough of them, you get a new optional boomerang. None of those are required to beat the game, but they do make the final boss a lot easier. While not groundbreaking or anything, the overall gameplay structure is solid, and I had a lot of fun playing it, though there are a couple of minor nitpicks I had. The primary one is that it is a bit of a pain to find the last collectibles, one of the last couple of orbs, or the last animal to free. Obviously, the internet does solve that problem overall, but it would have been nice to be able to buy some sort of in-game upgrade that that'll just mark them on your map after you've played through the stage a couple of times. And the other thing I took issue with in the game was the hit detection. The hitboxes just kind of feel a little bit too extended sometimes, especially in one of the rainforest levels where I was nowhere near one of the boulders falling and I still took damage. It's not a huge issue and it didn't kill me more than a handful of times, but it was annoying. Other than those two minor nitpicks, the gameplay for Ty the Tasmanian Tiger still holds up and it's fundamentally solid. At the end of the day, I'm honestly just really happy Chrome Studios revived the Ty the Tasmanian Tiger series, and after all these years and the amount of time that I did spend on the GameCube version when I was a kid playing it, I finally got to beat this game. There are a couple of minor issues like I mentioned, and I do feel the ending is a bit rushed, but honestly, minus those couple of small things, Ty the Tasmanian Tiger is still a very good game and I can easily recommend it. It's only $30, but I can easily say it's worth the price of admission because it took me just over 7 hours to beat the game and I still have about 20% of collectibles to go. Ty the Tasmanian Tiger HD is available on Switch, Xbox One, PS4, and the original games are available on PC and of course PS2, Xbox, and GameCube. Now if you'll excuse me, Ty the Tasmanian Tiger 2 HD just finished installing on my Switch and I'd like to go play it.